the next part of our 20 years of New Who celebrations, as we are now focusing on Series 7, final series as the 11th Doctor, and obviously this was the series that took us into the 50th anniversary year. Again, it meant that they had to split it in two parts, and it was a very bizarre way of splitting in two halves that they did for Series 7, because essentially 2012 being year of the London Olympics, they gave us the first five, and then they had a Christmas special in between, and then gave us the rest of the episodes at around Easter time of 2023, so around 2013 March time, which was when Easter was, is when they gave us the second half where Matt Smith would be joined by his new companion, played by Jenna Coleman, because of course Amy and Rory would leave in the first five episodes. That would introduce Jenna Coleman as TARDIS that was going to take their place as they leave the show and go on to bigger things, essentially. Make sure to comment your favorite episodes of Series 7, as I'm about to share mine. And yes, if you've got the DVD of Series 7, you'll know there are two Christmas specials mentioned that is behind this series, which is The Doctor, The Window and the Wardrobe, and The Snowman. We're going to be saving those Christmas specials till around, obviously, November time into December, when we'll cover the Christmas specials then. We're going to focus on the main episodes of the series. In terms of favorite episodes, I think I obviously have to acknowledge the Asylum of the Daleks, because, well, there is one part of this story that I think is going to made me happy. I think it made a lot of Whovians happy. The fact that classic model Daleks from the classic series were being used in this story. The fact that we got to see classic style Daleks from how they looked from the 60s, 70s, etc. were all being used as part of this, I guess, Dalek Parliament, essentially. Yeah, apparently the Daleks have a government, apparently. But yeah, this story basically established that they have their own, which is a lot more, I guess, universal compared to our one. But it was quite a relief to see the classic style Daleks being used for the first time, because Stephen Moffat obviously wanted these Daleks to be used in New Who, because I think at the time when he took over, he got kind of annoyed. Also, the feedback to the Teletubby Daleks that he did in Series 5 didn't really go down very, very well. So he tried to do whatever he could to try and remove. He just basically wanted to erase those Daleks, because he knew they were being made memes out of, and he didn't really. And also because he probably hated the whole idea of the Teletubby Daleks, because he literally thought it was gonna. I don't know. I thought he probably thought it was gonna go really, really well for this new look of Doctor Who that he was trying to achieve. But then because he realized that everybody loved the bronze Daleks and they loved the classic Daleks, he decided to basically put them as side Daleks and make them the main Daleks, make the bronze ones the main Daleks, which is what people wanted to see, and also give us the chance to see the classic Daleks, like the classic series Daleks, to be used this episode. And also this was perfect because this was their way of building us up to knowing that the following year was going to be Doctor Who's 50th anniversary. So Moffat knew that, and he had to try and build up to this and basically use that as an opportunity to sort of get us essentially ready for that anniversary by celebrating the legacy of the Daleks, which I think was a really nice way. Of course, there was the surprise appearance of Jenna Coleman in the story. Before she was playing Clara Oswald, she was playing Osmond Oswald, which was just I think we'll just name, I guess it's just because she was basically inside the Dalek, even though she talks which is, she thinks she's real, but inside, she's out in the real world. So that's what's happening so that was essentially what was happening with Asylum of the Daleks. And also plot line between Amy and Rory, the fact that they started with them trying to sign a divorce, because the whole argument was centered around the fact that Amy couldn't have, basically because of that because that woman who hated the Doctor we saw in Series 6 basically tried to prevent Amy from having any more children, therefore caused the whole argument between her and Rory. Doesn't matter, they got back together in the end, so the whole plot line was a bit pointless in the end. But nevertheless, that was what we saw. Like I said, that's what we saw with the Asylum of the Daleks. The Asylum of the Daleks, that was that story. And then the next story we have to acknowledge that I feel was a pretty good story was Town Called Mercy. I love the fact that they went to an old Western film set for this story. They did say it. But yeah, in the behind the scenes, they definitely went to a Wild West, like a old Western film set to film this story, and I'm actually really glad they did, because the set they used definitely has still has elements of that of the older Western films. I'm not entirely sure what Western film they based it on. If someone can let me know in the comment section what Western film they were trying to base the story on. We had this whole alien gunslinger who was after one of the characters with the tattoo on their face basically has done some crimes in the gunslinger's world, therefore he's on the hunt to kill him. The Doctor obviously confronts the gunslinger. He realizes that, yeah, the other guy is a bit of a troublemaker, but then he has to do the right thing and protect him. There, he ends up killing himself within his spaceship. Therefore, the gunslinger is now essentially going to become a protector of the town rather than a killer. So that's basically how that with that whole gunslinger thing. So yeah, in the end, he became friendly because the Doctor wanted to make sure that he became a protector for the people in that town. So I thought, and also a story about mercy. The Doctor's had multiple mercy moments in the show's history, so it's really nice to see they really tapped into that sort of storyline a bit in the story about how the Doctor's like copes when he has nobody around. He can really get into that mercy zone really quickly. So that was the town called Mercy. I also enjoyed the Power of Three. Mainly, I think one of the takeaways from this story is, of course, the fact that Kate Stewart finally came to Doctor Who and has took over from her father's duty. Obviously, her father being the Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. Classic series. Kate Stewart being the leader of UNIT, Stephen Moffat to do, because this meant that UNIT can live on many more years. And as we've seen in recent series, Kate Stewart is still going strong as the leader of UNIT and is still basically being a very successful leader, honoring her father's legacy. It was really great to see the Doctor interact with his daughter Kate, and the fact he knew about Kate for a very long time. This was like the first time that we get to see her on screen with the Doctor considering Kate Stewart. Kate Stewart never really at all. Brigadier always she was basically a child when the classic series was happening, so really get to see her grow up during Doctor Who. So she was a woman until we get to meet her in person properly, but it was definitely worth it. It was worth the wait to see Kate Stewart take on her father's duties, be able to continue the legacy that the Brigadier for Doctor Who. Because I mean, originally, but also he was getting old, and it wasn't fair for him, for his health, to keep going as the Brigadier. So since his passing, it makes sense that Kate Stewart would take over pretty much. And I think so. I'm actually kind of glad that, and also it was a very interesting story with that whole blue cubes counting down, attacking people at the heart, and then loses one of his hearts because of it, but then he is able to revive it. But yeah, lots of people were dying to this weird disease that came from the cube. The Doctor didn't know what to expect from these cubes, but yeah, it felt like some kind of like alien virus or something, or at least that's he looked at it as, and it was a written story of a lot of mystery to these blue cubes came from, what is their purpose, etc. And I love mystery to it. It's kind of felt very detective work, where you had to really like figure out, hey. So yeah, so that was the Power of Three. I love the Power of Three. Great story and a great introduction for Kate Stewart, and the fact that we got to see, it's because of that story that led to her and UNIT being more regularly involved with some of the future Doctors, which is, I was going to add The Angel Takes Manhattan, because like I said, I love the fact that they went New York City for this story. This story was ruined by one major thing. Part where they fall off from the build. That should have been the end. This whole bit afterwards where they somehow come back from falling from grace, and then all of a sudden they're coming back falling from grace, and then all of a sudden Rory finds his name on the gravestone, he disappears, and then it forces Amy to do the exact same thing so he can join Rory, because she doesn't want to leave Rory on his own. Obviously, Doctor would be sad because Amy gets touched by an angel, and that's the end of their sort of journeys and stuff. This companion duo, because I just feel like it was a very weird. And also, Rory was on the gravestone from the start. That would basically mean that essentially when Rory got kidnapped from the Weeping Angels, basically means that, well, that basically meant that Rory essentially died. So the story should have been the Doctor and Amy for the most part, because technically Rory, by bringing him back in time, but obviously the Doctor created this whole paradox just to make sure that he exists. And I don't know, I just feel like they should have just went with the whole them falling off was the end of their story. Paradox would be removed, therefore the Doctor had to leave Amy or Rory in that place because he can't go back there because of because of those paradox rules, etc. So I think that should have been the end, personally, in my opinion. I just feel like the way they ended it, being touched by an angel, was just been so much more better than how it looked. And I don't know, it just made it look very weak, in my opinion. I think they could have so much better. They could have just done that whole falling off the building thing, and then that would have been like the dramatic ending. Because Moffat had this thing about killing people and bringing people back, we knew we were going to expect something along those lines when they were about to leave anyway. If he didn't do that, yeah, that's why I just can't really. Angels Take Manhattan is one of my favorites because it's because that ending ruins it, in my opinion. It just ruins a lot more better, the Bells of St. John. The fact that we got to see Clara in the present day and the whole storyline about Wi-Fi, the storyline that we were going into with the Spoonheads as this sort of Wi-Fi, I guess, robot type thing, helps the Great Intelligence control these humans in the Shard to essentially load people into the Wi-Fi, which was a really rather evil way of trying to upload someone's consciousness into the Wi-Fi. Basically, it's a story to tell you guys about the dangers of Wi-Fi. Essentially, pretty sure a lot of people probably took some notes into the way how the Doctor views Wi-Fi, etc. He has a very, very specific sort of view around it, and it's just it was a really good story to basically bring us the introduction of modern Clara. That's essentially that whole story of the Bells of St. John. And I also love the chemistry. I love their chemistry. Jenna Coleman and Matt Smith did a really good job with the chemistry between the Doctor and Clara. The fact that the Doctor obviously now has one companion, and they just got along so nicely. I just love the atmosphere that these two brought with each story they do. It's just they have so much together that you can really tell. The Bells of St. John was a very fun story. The fact that we saw the Doctor with a sort of anti-gravity motorcycle interact with the woman in charge of that business, and then we find out she was in charge of the Great Intelligence, and he took the brain of this woman who's now acts like a child. Yeah, she acts like the brain of the child, essentially. So that was really cool that we got to see that. But yeah, so that was cool. And then we go straight into the Rings of Archetype, which was another great story. The music gets talked about. The speech from Matt Smith gets taught. I mean, that has to be probably one of his best speeches as the 11th Doctor, in my opinion, because of the way he sort of incorporated some of the memories of him being the David Tennant and Christopher Eccleston, just the fact that he relived memories from the RTD era as a way to honor that series with that speech was just very powerful. And also, like I said, the music and the story was very well received, to the point that they got featured in the soundtracks, and there were very popular tracks in the soundtrack. Whenever people stream the soundtrack, people listen to the songs from this story because it's a very popular story with the music. Now, another story I really enjoyed also, Cold War Ice Warrior storyline, the very first New Who Ice Warrior story that we got. They took some inspiration from Dalek. You could definitely see from Mark Gatiss that he brought the inspiration from the writer from Dalek, and basically brought that whole inspiration into the Ice Warrior, where you have this lonely Ice Warrior in a submarine trying to get back to his people, and then the fact that he tries to kill at one point, but he finally realizes that, he saw the error of his ways. But the fact that we got to see a version of the Ice Warrior, like the lizard side of the Ice Warrior, what was inside the armor, we got to see that face for the first time and get to find out that essentially the Ice Warrior was essentially a lizard in a bodysuit the entire time. And the fact that we had that sort of lore added to the Ice Warriors is really kind of made you more invested in these creatures. The fact that they had this sort of lizard part that you never saw before, and it just basically introduced you to sort of a new concept of how the Ice Warriors function. They just move like fish and stuff, and like how lizards usually. All right, and then of course we another story I also enjoyed is, and I think this will probably be the final one we mentioned, is the Nightmare in Silver. I love the Cybermen armor that we got to see. The redesign of the Cybermen Gaiman introduced as part of this story, probably a lot better than, probably 10 times better than what Russell T Davies provided. I mean, not to criticize the guy, these Cybermen, there was that one complaint constantly with the old arm. People got sick and tired, put on the task to redesign the Cybermen to make them more quieter, make them have a bit more secrets. You know, you're not going to know when they're coming, sort of atmosphere. Try and redo the Cybermen in a way that's going to not only make them scary, them so that you don't know when they're coming. And that's exactly what Neil Gaiman did. He essentially made the armor suits a little bit more lighter so that the actors who were in them feel the difference of being a Cyberman in this armor than they do in the other armors. A lot of them said it was a lot lighter and they enjoyed being in this armor suit, so that was definitely an improvement. They have, they definitely have those sort of wired head, inspired from the Invasion. That's it. You've also got the gun on the arm now, so it's basically just attached into the armor, so it doesn't just pull out. It's essentially a part of the arm. And then you've also got the fact that they've got these really cool tricks where they can drop one part, well, basically drop their hand and use it like a spider, which is, that was pretty freaky. The fact one of the Cybermen dropped their hands and used it as a spider on someone, like, that is, talk about Halloween horror. And then the fact that they've got these new rocket, I guess, like, flying capabilities, the Cybermen, because yes, the Cybermen have new flying capability that we don't see until Series 8, but we'll talk about that, the fact that they've got this new flying capability that was being introduced as part of the armor that would be carried over into Peter Capaldi's reign. And then you've also got, and then they've got these, like, I guess mice, or I guess we'll call them cyber mice or something, where they essentially, if they attach your skin, you'll have Cybermen in your brain. So essentially half of your brain will be human and half of your brain will be Cybermen. That's what we saw happen to the Doctor. So essentially one half of his brain be the Doctor, the other half would essentially be the Cybermen. Basically try to find out information about the Doctor by speed. And obviously the Doctor would do whatever he could to essentially get the Cybermen out of his head, which luckily he did. And then the Cybermen came out of his body. Therefore, the Doctor could finally get back in the fight. And also, another thing I have to note is that there was one guy, Alfie, who talks about the fact that he talks about his dad, right? He talks about, I learned this stuff from my dad, sort of, which is also kind of funny because, well, the season before, the two previous seasons, if I'm right in believing, guy that we saw in like the guy that spoken to Janet Coleman's Clara Oswald was essentially the son from the past two series. Maybe an Easter egg. Could it be him? Maybe. Could it be Alfie? The Alfie, the Stormageddon, as the Doctor used to call him. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the Alfie we're talking about here, because wouldn't it be cool if that was confirmed to be the actual Alfie that was referred to as Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All from the 11th Doctor? Can you imagine if there was a scene between those two and then the Doctor's like, I remember you were with your father, as an Easter egg? I like to be hopeful I'm right that it is him. I suppose we'll find out if Moffat decides to, or maybe Neil Gaiman will confirm whether or not that's true. Nightmare in Silver was fun. It was fun to see that new Cybermen design and see them. So that is my favourite episodes of Series 7. Let me know yours in the conversation below, and we are going to be moving into Peter Capaldi. Basically kicks off his year as the 12th Doctor with a more darker tone with Series 8, and we're going to find out whether those episodes were dark. Probably the most darkest series we've seen in Doctor Who so far. Let me know your thoughts on Series 7 in the comment section, and I'll see you all as we look back at Peter Capaldi's first series, Series 8, as we introduce, as Clara now has, with a much older version of the Doctor in the form of the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi.